Okay, we are live. I'm live with the great Jon Sinclair, golf coach, golf researcher. You've done enough work now. You could probably be called a golf scientist. I would maybe
Oh,
some
I don't think I'd go that far, no.
maybe get an honorary scientific PhD.
Yeah, maybe I can call me Dr. John, and I can be like one of those people that got their honorary doctorate, didn't do anything.
That's right,
But
like
yeah,
Dr. J.
yeah, there you go, exactly.
But timing couldn't have been better, given who's been on over the past few weeks. Sasha was on 2 weeks ago. Dr. Stu McGill was on about a month ago. And also what's been happening in the golf coaching world, it seems like we've got another debate, heated debate going on with various disciplines out there. So I was happy to have you on and messages, last night to get your opinion because of all the research you've done, you're one of the pioneers in doing research on swings and what happens. And it like you said earlier in the pre-show, here's what the numbers say, and I'm not biased towards one or the other. This is just what the science shows us. So I'm
Hmm.
very excited to have you on. Talk about all these things today. So I don't even know where to jump in. I guess we'll ease in a little bit to is with a simple question I got from somebody that saw that you were coming on and because you do a lot of consulting for very high level players. So
Hmm.
when their coaches call you up or they call you up and say, "Hey, John, can you take a look at this?" Does that become more of a collaboration or a consulting or your coaching opinion, or how would you either define or differentiate those? Because their coach is coming in with them, and you guys are all working together to fix something.
Well, as a general rule, I would just keep my mouth shut in my opinions and stick to whatever their ideas are and what information they want. On a side note, a lot of times I'll write a report that will point out some things and then maybe give that coach some of my opinions. But every relationship's different. Sometimes I'm more involved and sometimes I'm less involved. Sometimes I'm just spitting out the information. I mean, I have a recent player that's, you know, I kind of say what's going on and what's happening, but they're all focused on a different area. And um, my belief is they're poking in the wrong place. And so I will voice that obviously in private, never in front of the player.
Hmm.
So then it's different. And then if it's more of a collaboration, which I have a few that way where I'm free to say to the player, you know, what I want. But I know which hat to wear and I keep my nose out of their business. And I think that's one of the reasons I've been successful. I don't go around, broadcasting who's in here I think that information should always be the player's decision whether or not they know they come here or they don't.
Hmm.
Um, so, it could be all of the above, I should say, but I get quite a bit of information that um, I'm asked to look over, and so I look it over, give my opinion, or just give the facts depending on what I'm asked to do.
Yeah, and you obviously are very good at it because you continue to your business is thriving. It continues to grow, and people continue to seek you out at every single level, best players in the world included. So you're doing whatever you're doing it right. Keep doing
Yeah, well, people come in here, I don't even have a sign. Um, I do. I'm going to put a sign up there one day that says somewhere in Texas because that's where I usually hear um, on the TV. I will hear this player, that player goes somewhere in Texas to work with their 3D, and so I did tell my wife maybe we should just because there is no sign, there's no windows, there's no nothing. You have to find it. So I thought maybe I would just put somewhere in Texas. Maybe we can incorporate this block and get a new city or something.
it. Yeah, and then you can do one of those Google or MapQuest things where they could do the pin and it would say somewhere in Texas.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, yeah. I have that pin on the Google. I just need to change the name, I think.
There you go. Well, you are known to do a lot of different research, and it's part of why people seek you out. Again, it's research in real science. It's not some, I'll call it pseudoscience. As science has gotten it's lost some of its mystique over, with COVID and everything that happened with that. And then even in golf circles, fitness circles, nutrition. I mean, those nutritionists, if we think golf coaches argue, we got nothing on the nutritionists. They go in
Yeah.
hard. Um,
Yes.
but science has lost, I think, some of its luster as a whole because people used to hear that and they would say, okay, this is equates to interpretation of fact. Uh, but you have not lost that. When people bring up your name or your work, everybody knows that it's going to be unbiased. It's going to be true,
Hmm.
at least as true as anybody in the world can get to. So, what are you working on lately? Because you always got something going on.
Um, Now I'm working with motion to coach, and then obviously TPT. Still, that's a 9-year project, and motion to coach now for the last, I guess, almost 3 years at this point. And really trying to marry those two things together. I'm seeing so much help to players from the TPT shaft. And then we have this now new AI-based 3D markerless stuff that's getting ridiculously accurate and able to see things that we couldn't see, and the freedom to get the wires off of them, to get the weight off the club. And people didn't realize how much that's affecting the data. So I've always known since I put the wires on. I guess it's got to be close to 20 years. I don't even know what day it is, but the I knew I wanted to get rid of them
Hmm.
from the very first time I got in them, from the very first time I put somebody in them and listened to the complaints. Um, I just knew that something was not 100%, but the data is the data. It is what we had, and it's as good as it could be, and so that we did a lot of good with that. But I now found for sure that we're going to move out of that and go into the markerless. I've tried every other way to get rid of the wires through optical, gears and stuff like that, but I still kept finding the same problems of I'm adjusting the weight of the club and I'm adjusting things and I'm confining them with maybe tight clothes or a smaller area or wires or whatever it is. And then when I've seen it now, when I've placed them in that same condition and watched the swings and then take them out and able to capture the swings in the same way, it's pretty drastic of what's
The
happening.
differences. Yeah.
Yes, it's crazy drastic. And then to see what a shaft does to somebody, during a fitting, I have to tell the players all the time in there is like, you know, when I start changing things, you got to keep trying to swing the way that you want to swing and quit adjusting because it's not your fault. It's not your fault until I tell you it's your fault when we hit bad shots because as I change these shafts, I'm looking for the reaction. I'm looking for not just the ball flight, but how'd your body move in a different way. And you think you're swinging the same way, but you're not. And so we can change them crazy. And half the time I don't know how I'm going to change them when I get it. I can have an expectation of what the ball will do based on the shaft I hand them.
Hmm.
But at the same time, everybody reacts so differently to how it bends and the weight and the loads and the twists and they can move crazy, crazy different places. And so you have to go through that. That's why I don't let them hit more than a couple of shots, maybe three, um, before even an avid golfer is going to adjust. And a tour player, they're really adjusted by the second swing. Um, so you don't want to give them too many third swings. I'll run it, I'll violate that law occasionally when I'm like, man, I just want to see that again, um, and make sure. And so, like in a fitting, what I will do is get them to where, okay, I know that shaft in my mind is good, and then I'll start handing them all kinds of things that I know is going to mess them up,
Hmm.
and then I come back to that one that I want, and the validation, that first swing should be good. And so that's kind of how we did it. But the AI will take that to another level at some point here in the future.
It was amazing because I was doing shaft fitting when I got done playing. I was doing working for a guy that had his own shaft fitting company. Uh, um, and then I worked for him for 3 years. And what I found amazing was some of these clubs were really off. let's say, and we were doing a lot with frequency back then. So let's say somebody's clubs were 18 cycles off, which is pushing 2 flexes, according to most people. Let's say we'll
Mm-hmm.
say 10 cycles CPMs is a flex. I'm sure someone out there will argue that, but just for sake of conversation. And then once we got them dialed into where they should be, and should be meaning within 2 cycles either direction, their ability to adapt, as you said, for the better was almost instant, depending on how many shots they had hit with their clubs in a warm up or a hitting session. If they hit their clubs for 20 minutes after they were warmed up and we took their numbers, within 6 swings of the club that they should have, and we never told them. We would give them multiple clubs, like you said. Give them one that doesn't fit, that's going to be stiffer than what's going to be recommended, one that is supposed to fit according to what we were using, and one that was too weak. And we'd let them make the decision. And they 99.9 out of 100, they would go to the one that we thought they should. And their ability to adapt and start hitting the ball consistent, and their swing would fall more into place without us having to say you're working your upper body too much or you're not doing this too much. As you said, it was amazing to watch. I would have never have understood that if someone would have told me that as someone that played and someone that had done a lot of coaching. I'd have said there's no way the club can have that much effect until I saw it. And then not just saw it once, but I saw it over and over and over, hundreds. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know. I don't think I did 1,000 fittings, but I saw a lot. And to see that was amazing. Just it's people's swings fall into place. And this, I've been working on this for 2 years, and you're telling me that my clubs weren't allowing me to do it? Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. And now
And
they're
it's crazy. And it's, the club can change a swing and the swing can change the club, and it's just this thing. And the truth is we need to go from both directions to get to
mm-hmm.
the real answer. Ooh, can I share my screen? Are
Yeah,
people going to be able to see this?
yep. Especially
I
I know
have one, since we're talking about, let me find this here. How can I share? I don't know where to share on here.
at the bottom of the screen on mine it says share. I don't know if it says it on yours as well.
Hmm. No, I've got a little thing off the side. Slider, speaker. I'm gonna just push that, see if it'll do that. Huh? That didn't do anything. Go back to the grid. Um,
I'm always on this side. I've never been on that side of the
yeah,
system.
contact support. Well, anyway. Oh, wait, maybe up here. Enter full screen, maximize. Nope. Well, I can tell you about it. So I had a player, and I showed this in a couple of things that I've spoke at recently, of just the dramatic change. So I had a player, and I'd seen him a couple of times, and long left miss, dumping the club, and so we just kind of touched on the surface of it, and he found out, TPT has a new iron shaft that we're going to promote and put out there. And at the time I was doing the prototype testing on it, and he says, I want to come in and try the shaft. And I said, fine, come on in. And, he comes in, and I put him in the shaft, and he played if I remember right, it was a 7X 133 gram shaft. And there's a plus handicap, so he's a good player. And he's burly and big, and he can swing. And they had him fit wherever he went to get these clubs fit. And then he comes in, he goes, well, I'm going to try the shaft. And I put a shaft in. Well, our heaviest one that's going to come out at first is 102 grams. So the stiffest one, the heaviest one is 102. We will make one that's heavier soon, but the prototype idea works so well, we want to get it out there, and then we'll just make even a better one down the road. But I put him in this shaft, and his first swing, we weren't doing anything other than hitting. I looked, and I was like, that was different. I mean, that was like really different. And so I gave him back his club, and he went down because he had a little sway move down and all this, and all of a sudden it didn't happen. And I was like, wow. And I'd made sure the same swing weight of the club, that he would have the same feel other than that weight of the shaft. And so I was like, wow, we got to back up. So we back up to the force plates, and I put him on the motion to coach, and I just started alternating the clubs. So I'd capture one with his heavier club, one with the lighter one, and probably did, I have it all on there, probably, it was more than 20 swings, maybe it's somewhere around 20 each or something. Just going back and forth, and I'm sitting there with my mouth open watching it. And the first thing I noticed is that with his heavy club, his peak force was happening at impact, his peak vertical force, which is bad, right? And so then when I handed him the other one, it happened right between P5 and P6, where it should. And I was like, wow, and then I looked at the sway, and he's about a half-inch less sway. His knee, which I didn't have, we don't have the knee sway on there, but there was stuff behind him. He's standing in the same place, and his knee was about that far, at least an inch and a half less pushed forward. And then I got to the club, and from, shaft parallel, so P6 down to P7, his 133 gram shaft, he would dump 10 more degrees. And then there was the long left miss, and he never did it. And he has not, we obviously changed the clubs right away. He's like over the moon because he doesn't see any balls go left. The dispersion went more this way and more this way. And to your point earlier, that's a massive change. And it wasn't like he had done on his own some work. We had just begun to work together and talk about potential issues for this thing when this jumped up, and the fix was, change the club. And then we could go on to things so much faster. I don't know that had he wanted to at least try the new shaft, if that would have jumped out, so quickly as being a shaft problem. Because he was trying to get the spin down, get it lower. Of course, that's why they put him in the heavier club and that. And I think too, and then I know we want to talk a little bit about the, injury prevention. That's one of the things we're after. That was the actual original idea for carbon fiber and TPT was for injury prevention in the wrist and stuff like that. Well, I almost believe, and I talked to Sasha about this one time a long time ago, Dr. McKenzie, and I do see players all of a sudden swing faster with a heavier shaft sometimes. And they engage different muscles and they swing faster. And then he made a comment that to me it stuck in my head really, really good. And he said, but I believe, he goes, I don't remember exact words, but I believe that that's probably true. But eventually, if they train, the lighter will go faster. And they'll be able to go faster. Maybe at this point they would, but if they train properly, the lighter shaft probably would go faster. Well, obviously that's sticks in my head even when I see somebody do that, which isn't all the time, but usually you can see it. And so that sticks in my head. And then I started thinking about these shafts. I mean, you get a 133 gram shaft and an iron that you're hitting the ground. Some guys here in Texas, I mean, they're 8, 9 down, having to beat it out of the ground. And the vibration that you get and the heavy weight. And that's the other reason we're going into the motion to coach and do the musculoskeletal stuff that'll tell us the loads you're putting on each joint and how much you're doing with each joint. Well, this is all going to fit together. And my theory would be we're going to find out that it's going to be healthier and have better swings to go lighter. And I also think we'll find out. But the one thing is the technology hasn't been able to be put out there that you can make it light with a low enough torque for a good player until TPT, right? So we can make more flex, make it lighter, and have a lower torque. So that technology should revolutionize that, and the more we learn, the more we find out. I just have this feeling that it's going to be a health benefit to players too, for longevity and less pain.
Yeah, I think the going to that example you use of going lighter and why some people. I had talking to a friend the other day, and I'm 52 now. He's in his late 40s, and he's telling me how he's still swinging 128-gram steel shaft, and I said, why? At your age, and he's had left shoulder issues, he's had back issues. I said, why do you not switch to graphite? um, or at least 115 or under steel shaft. Why are you swinging something so heavy? Because you're like I would have to say he's going to do something like the fell that you just described. He's doing something in his swing to try to make up to get that shaft to work in the way that he wants it to work, and it's working against him, and he's going to continue to do that. And I told him, I said, your injuries, barring if you did something in the gym or you damaged it somewhere else, are only going to continue to get exacerbated if that shaft is working against you or that golf club is working against you in some
Mm-hmm.
way, shape, or form. Especially, he was a very good player, and hit a lot of balls. And I said, what do you think the wear and tear is on your body and on your joints from something like that? So that's where we might as well get into it now. Where sometimes science will say one thing, and it's correct in the grand scheme of things, as far as that science is concerned, whether it's physics or whatever discipline, but it might not be good for the individual. And as we were talking earlier, we can, the easiest one to describe is somebody's joint movement or range of motion. They might not have the joint capacity to get a wider or bigger range of motion. No matter how much they stretch, they might increase it. But if they continue to try to do something that their body is not capable of doing, and then go swinging at whatever their swing speed is, they're trying to get to 90, they're trying to get to 100. If they're long drive, they're trying to get to 130 plus. Um, then they're only going to be doing damage. And now you throw a shaft or a club on there that doesn't fit them correctly, and now it's just a multiple. And I've got to imagine and sure that you see this quite often. People come in,
Mm-hmm.
examples like you just said. So have you seen people come in with injuries, not
Mm-hmm.
just missed shots? That once you get them in the right equipment, that it's
Oh
like,
yeah,
holy shit, is this
absolutely.
easy?
Yeah. I mean, huge. I had working with a local pro here, and he came in and has had back problems forever. And he's a big, tall guy, and you know, he has to go down. His clubs are, a little bit off, and then he has to tilt his spine, and he's trying to keep his pelvis level.
Mm-hmm.
And then people would say, "Oh, you need to stand up more, and you need to get longer clubs, and you need to do all this stuff." And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" you know, why don't we talk about this for a second? I mean, your arms hang down past your knees, and you standing up, you're going to be hitting it all over the place. And so why don't we look at the lower body a little bit? And if I can get your tilt in coming, some good right side bend coming through, and I get you to right side bend your pelvis, well, that's going to take the shear out of your lower back,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we're not so, twisted to look like that. We're
Yeah,
more in line, and then you can get down and hit the shots you want
you're
because
not
he
bending
wants
it
to
like a
play.
paper clip. Yeah, you sit there, you're
Right.
on your right side bend, no pelvis. You're gonna bend that paper clip. It's gonna break at some point.
And he's had, back when he was trying to play professionally, he's had all these back injuries, and he doesn't hurt at all now. And he hits it further, faster, farther, higher, and he hits the cut that he wants to hit. He was relegated the way he was having to swing to protect his back to a flip draw because he's standing too straight up, and there's no way he's going to get open enough
Mm-hmm.
to hit the cut that he wants. And the only way he could play good, and of course that was killing his driver. He couldn't, he wouldn't even play a driver. And so now we got him hitting drivers, and he's carrying it, and his back doesn't hurt. He can practice more because he loves to go in the gym. He's very fit. And so, yes, all these things that are just understanding, and probably the biggest one I see injury wise, people coming in, is overextension in the spine at the top of the swing, trying to get extra range of motion, as you said, and get the club back. And if it's one thing you can turn it back and lift it back, there's another thing if you add a lot of extension in the spine. And, to me, that's like the big, radar that jumps out when you're overextended at the top in the spine, because now you're in a very weak position. And then when you come down, and it's what I've talked to this with Ben Shear a lot about the over shearing and it's not at impact, it's just past impact, where we'll see the upper body separate out. And I always look at if that's, we don't do exactly where they start, but if that number starts to get past 7 inches, I've had tour players come in there that were 12 and 13, 14, and you're just going, oh my gosh, and you're still playing. I'm like, and you really never know, does a person, is a person should they really be out there at Cirque du Soleil and then be the contortionist? Because, those people can do crazy things. Or, or are they just getting away with it because they're younger? And as they get older, they're just going to wreck it. And usually it's the latter. As they get older, they're going to wreck it. And we should really pay attention to that. So those things I have just sitting on my sheet when I do an analysis to make sure I'm always looking at these certain areas where we can pretty much say with a high probability there's going to be a injury. The knee getting pushed out too far in front of the lead foot. When you're trying to turn, and then you're putting all that stress on your knee to try to turn when it doesn't turn good. And everybody would always say that, extending your knee, like a Koepka or even Tiger when he was younger, like that's going to hurt your knee. And I was like, nah, but then that's what it's designed to do. And it's not designed to twist. It's designed to extend and flex and go. And you could probably do that as fast as you want, and it's not going to hurt anything. So sometimes I think golf too, we've gone, well, because we don't like the way it looks, we're going to go, oh, that's going to hurt somebody, when it's actually a lot of times the opposite. If you don't know what the joint's supposed to be doing, you realize that the problem is going to happen there at some point. And generally you can say too, if some part of your body is aching, it's got to be somewhere else that's causing it. It's not there, right? It's what move are you making and what's not doing its job around it that's causing these injuries, because the golfer will hit the ball. They will. That's the goal. And no matter what position they're in, they'll figure out a way to hit the ball. And I think to your point earlier, it's just, is that club working against them to where they have to get in some funny position? Or is it a stereotype? You're tall, you need long clubs,
God,
and
drive me crazy.
Yeah, and you get an 1.5-inch long club because you're 6'5", but most of those 6'5" guys that I see, I see, I don't know him, so I can say it. So Michael Jordan, I see him, coming in the ball and he's like all this, and you're like, his clubs are too long. And I was able to talk to him one day out at the Bears Club for a second, and he did, and I said, dude, those clubs are too long. I don't know if he ever got it fixed or something like that, but we were talking a little bit about that, and I did tell him, I said, I don't know who's fitting you, but you got to have shorter clubs.
Yeah,
So
I learned that when we had lunch that day after coach camp, and we were talking about putting, and I remember I'd come up with a putter fitting system. When I was doing that, I found out that there were ratios of people for fitting. So, and not to get off the full swing topic, but there was depending the person's amount of bend or lean forward was going to be not only off their height, but the difference in ratio. And I would measure from the top of the hip joint or the iliac crest to the shoulder, because it was easy to measure out on the golf or out on the putting green. But the closer that was to 2-to-1 between the iliac crest and the ground, the more they would be bent over, so their arms are going to be closer to the ground. Their putters tended not to be as long but flatter. And you take someone like my brother, who has more of a 3-to-1, where his legs constitute a larger portion of his overall height than his upper body. He's not going to be bent over as much. Now his putter, assuming the arms aren't really long, is going to have to be longer and more upright. And then that was after I'd done the club fitting, and we never fit by height or gender ever. It was always like, here's where your measurements are. This is not biased opinion. This is just what you measure out to be based off how far the toe and the heel and the hands and the shoulders and everything else is turning in its motion. They all have to somewhat be synced as far as your timing. Not saying that they end and start at the same positions, but they have to be synced for the top of the swing impact and the finish.
Mm-hmm.
And people had no comprehension of that. And I got fit here, I got fit there, and we used to tell them, you got, well, I won't say, even though it's my show, I'm not going to drop that bomb. So you got custom screwed, you didn't get custom fit. We custom, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
They're like, well, I spent $1,500. They're like, well, you can go back and they're going to say we don't know what we're talking about, but here's what the data is. We're not selling clubs, we're selling the fitting, and we can make these kind of work, but yeah, it nothing to do with height. And I see some of these people that, well, I need longer because I'm taller. Not necessarily.
Yeah, maybe if you got short arms,
Yes.
and then and you see a lady a lot of times hitting a stock driver, even though they're good, and then everybody wonders why they hit it high heel. The thing's sitting up like that when all you have to do is stand up next to them, and for a normal person, the butt of the driver might sit on the ground, maybe your belly button or just below, and this is it's up there in the middle of their chest, and and they're trying to swing it. Now they have to have some length just to get some speed, so it's going to be a little bit disproportional, a shorter person to a taller person, but I mean, some of this stuff is crazy, and then they find out they can actually swing faster when you shorten it up. Maybe they need
Yes.
a 44 and a half or a 44, and they can actually swing faster than this thing at 45 and 3/4 that, they've been told because it's longer they can swing faster, but they can't handle it.
That would be
And
another one of physics being correct. Will a longer lever hit the ball further? Yes.
mhm,
If you can move it proportionally faster. But most
if you're
people can't.
strong enough,
Yes,
right?
if you're strong enough. Most people can't move it. There was a fellow out, he was hitting a 47-inch driver one day. I said, Bill, what are you doing? Well, I can hit this longer. So I got the radar gun, the portable one. This, again, 20 years ago, it was a Beltronic. Wasn't the best, but for the time, it served the purpose. Um, and I put it down. I said, what were you swinging your driver when you got fit? And I think he said 98, 99. So I put this one down. He got this 47-inch driver. He's barely able to get 92. I said,
Hmm.
look, don't take it the wrong way, but you're 71 years old. You're not going to be able to move that club fast enough to get it to kick out and start having the speed pick up. And he didn't believe me till he saw that. I said, here, I'm not standing. I'm not programming it. I'm just going to put it down and turn it on. And he would swing and 7 miles an hour slower. Even when he cranked it up, he still couldn't hit his numbers with his 44.5-inch driver.
Right, and that's why the USGA and RNA, that was one of the biggest giant wastes of time and energy, is to make the club have to be 46 instead of 48, or however the hell long they want to make it, because they're just taking the fun away from somebody that wants to mess with it,
Mm-hmm.
and then it doesn't help that much. I mean, it's not like, and the amount of people that could swing a 48-inch driver is very small, and so it's like, I mean, even most of the tour players, they might go there for a little bit, but they always get it because it gets too wild, and they always go back. So it's just like that. That's a rule thing that just drives me insane. It's like, why are you doing that? And then, but I would have people that come in and they're just, even if they're not, they just want to try it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they want to go hit it, and you're like, okay, well, you want to have some fun. It's not killing you. Let's do it and see what happens. I mean, it rarely ever worked. 48-inch driver. Other than just having some fun, maybe for a big giant guy that could swing it.
Who was a Texas guy? You remember Rocky Thompson when he had
Oh yeah,
the
yeah,
Bumblebee, and I think they were going out to 50 inches back then. And of
yeah.
course, he's on the Champions Tour and knocking it out there as long as anybody. At least that's what they were saying on TV. And then that thing just took off.
No, yeah. No, if that's what happens, it doesn't make it right.
Mm-hmm.
If a
Good
tour
marketing.
player wins with it, not only will everybody use it, so will the tour guys, right? I mean, if one guy wins, they're like, well, I'm going to try that, and that's how it kind of the marketing kind of works, even out at the tour level, even if it's not the right thing. So they do it just like every other golfer. Tour players aren't any different. If this brand wins, well, I want to try that one. That's the way it works, and then of course that drives the market, which is great for golf to some degree because it keeps the money flowing and going. But you come into a place like mine, I'm not selling clubs, I'm selling performance.
Mm-hmm.
So whether or not you leave here with a new shaft or a new club is irrelevant. You leave knowing that what you have is the best for you. And I think that's not a great way to generate revenue all the time, on that end. But it is, to me, the what's my business is built on.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe your motto could be, we sell improvement, not just
right.
products.
Yeah.
You
So,
you had mentioned motion to coach, and that's
hmm
you're involved in that, and it's the markerless system. And I know that if anyone gets on social media or chat rooms, I think if those are still around to some extent, that the motionless or the markerless systems have caught some grief from the naysayers in that it's not as accurate as it could be, or it's not as accurate as it was touted, or this, that, and that. But it's been, you've been out for a few years. That might have been the knock early on, but it seems to continue in the ether from maybe some who are uneducated, or just that's their, seems like it's their job in life and their profession, that they're going to bash or poo-poo any technology that comes out, regardless of how much it advances. And you've been out for 3 years, I
yeah,
think.
yes, and it's just continuing to improve. And there's a few things. And first, when you have somebody that's a naysayer, look. There's an agenda behind this. There's definitely going to be agenda there. And you just got to look at whatever their agenda is, and they may be protecting their business because they have a certain technology or whatever that's, whoa, now I just bought this and this is coming out, and there's a certain amount, and I don't blame them for that either. I mean, it is what it is. But usually there's an agenda and a naysayer. They're not really digging deep into the potential of what something is. So we have to say, when you have a phone, which Motion Coach does, and you have, your phone set up, and you're going to get predicted 3D. So it's not 3D, it's predictive. And is it accurate? It says, oops, did I lose you? Are you there?
No, you're still there. Yeah, can you
Okay,
hear
you
me?
blinked out there, but yeah, it's as accurate as that can be with predictive AI technology. So the people that look at that, oh my gosh, I put it on there, and I know there was one person out there one time that, see, this isn't as good as the AMM or the Bull system or whatever, and then you look at them and they got the wires under a big puffy coat. Look like the Michelin Man, and they're showing, see, it doesn't work, and I'm like, okay, well, yes, you can do that, right? You can cheat it, and you can make it look bad if that's what you want to do, instead of push forward what we know is going to be good. I mean, we have the error rate down under a millimeter,
Wow.
so it's getting better, and we're at multiple cameras, but the difference in what we're doing at Motion to Coach is writing our own models. There's no outside sourcing. There's no open source. There's none of that. It's our own technology, our own models, and there's a ton of them. Okay, there's a lot of them, and then we're going from an 8-camera system with the AI teaching a 6, teaching a 4, teaching a 2, teaching a 1. So it's going the other way, and so each day the phone gets more and more accurate. Is it ever going to be fully accurate? No. It will be when we add the other phone and synchronize the camera and have 2 phones collecting data, then it'll be real 3D. But the people that say, well, I've worked with AI for all these years, this ain't your daddy's AI. This is different. This is not it. AI gets smarter. So if you worked with it back in the 90s, this isn't the same stuff. And so it's very different. And machine learning is a concept that it continues to learn. And just like I said, I don't know if I said it on this or I said it in the pre-show, the flickering of the lights. There's certain lights that flicker, and the AI just fixed it. It saw that was a problem in its ability to see what was going on in the video, and so it made the adjustment to fix it, even though it wasn't asked to. So that's how this stuff works. So it's the more data you get in, the better it can all be, and we're looking at human motion and not trying to say whatever AMM said And what I'm seeing now is those things are very close together on all kinds of different uh, things that we measure. Some things, we measure differently than AMM, so that's
Right.
never going to be the same. But these people that have naysayers, they're protecting something, and everybody that knows me, I don't care if I just spent $40,000 on something, and you call me, I'm going to tell you where the errors are. And all I ever want to know is where the errors are. So if we're coaching, I just want to know where the errors are. It drives me nuts that somebody will put out a product and then hide their errors. Um, because as long as you know the error, you can deal with it, and it's not a problem. You can coach with it. But when you start thinking what you're seeing is real and it's not, that's where the problems come in.
Yeah, there's that seems to be common that when if and when their errors are brought up to a certain discipline, it's they're already so much invested or down the road for launch or updates or what have you that they either don't they'll argue you to death or they won't acknowledge it. And I don't understand that if coaches and equipment companies, meaning the technology companies, are coming from a position of we're here to better the game and better the player and make everybody improve, and so we're going to provide this data and information allow you to do that. It's like you understand that fundamentally you're going against what your whole business mantra is to begin with if you're not going to acknowledge this. Now, I'm not saying that every Tom, Dick, and Harry that comes along and says your calculations of X are wrong. Not meaning you, Jon Sinclair, but other companies that people have asked me about, and I said, well, who I talked to said that, or what I calculation done said that this is off by about up to 11% on these reads. And I'm not a physics guy. I'm not a biomechanics guy. I just said read enough and been around enough people to I can bounce this off of and say, am I on the right path here? And they'll say yes. But getting back to the point is some of these companies will be so heavily invested that they won't acknowledge that, which doesn't help anybody.
No, and it's happening. It happens a lot, and then you get once you've sold enough, then you create almost, I hate to dare say it, but a cult kind of a mentality that this is better than that and that's better than that, and you're not allowed to say that some machine that you don't even have has some value, because I'm an X brand person and it's the best. Obviously, you buy it because you believe it's the best,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't mean that you can't acknowledge that some other things have some different good qualities that you can use. I'm a TrackMan guy from the first TrackMan, that I could get, and that doesn't mean that I can't. I have several players that have quad, and that doesn't mean we don't bring it in there and we don't use it because quad is bad. I'm a TrackMan person, but if I have a client that's a quad person, we use the quad, because it's different. And so we have to, we want to teach them in their environment and what they're using versus, just saying, well, that's crap because of X, Y, and Z. And whether that's true or not, who knows, right?
Yeah, you
But
got to speak their language.
right, and you have to use what they have in front of them, and it's all of it's got value.
I would have to imagine that in so many years of doing this, your ability to go from one piece of tech to another has become very streamlined and efficient. That you're even in your own mind, you can figure the differences and how you're going to explain it to somebody. If it's a
Mhm.
quad, then you're able to put it in take what that's giving you, put it in your mind for what it would be in TrackMan, which is what you're used to. Reformulate that so you can explain it to the person in front of you that they're going to understand it in their own language.
Right,
And
and
that's a
and
very
and
rare skill.
that's right. So when they come in, if they're using a quad, you want to understand quad, even though I don't own one, I understand it, and so that I'm not giving them the information I would get that somebody's using a TrackMan
Hmm.
because it's different, especially on the face, right? So we got to know these things so that we can give the value back to the customer, and we're on the same page. Same thing we do in fitting. I ask so many questions because I want to know whether they're feeling, torque, or they're feeling bend, or they're feeling weight. So I'm asking questions, but they may call flex torque. Most of the time they do. They'll feel a very twisty shaft and they're going to say, this is too loose, this is bendy.
Hmm.
And then you give them a more flexible one with a tighter torque and they go, yeah, this is stiff, right? So So you learn their language and you talk, and that goes for technology too. If you use Doc Neal's system, the Gulf Biodynamics, well, he has the same system as AMM as far as the hardware. It's a Paul Hema system, but he does some different calculations in there, and if you don't understand that, he actually starts the top of the swing is when the pelvis transfers to the downswing. And then AMM is when the club transfers. Well, that's a big damn difference,
Mm-hmm.
when you start talking about it, because the timings are different. You have to look at it in a different way. And if you don't know what you're looking at, you can make a mistake. And, even with the X factor and stuff like that, his is a little bit different. You can argue to which one's right, wrong, or indifferent, but it doesn't matter. If it's captured on that one, that's the information you have to use. And that goes for any system that you're using. That's why I try my best is when new products come out, I investigate, I try to use them, I try to see what they're doing. Not in more of a competitive atmosphere, but in more of yeah, I'm gonna have people use this, and so if I do, like a hack motion, I don't use it. I tried it early on. I didn't care for it as much, but it doesn't hesitate when one of my students, can I get one? Yeah, get one. We'll use it. We'll use it, and I understand how it works, and so it's a valuable tool.
Mm-hmm.
And if they want to use it, I'm into coaching them with it. I don't have to own it, right?
I think Andrew Rice's response to, I think there was a lady somewhere where he was talking, said that technology was, she was just hardcore. The technology was ruining the game, and the naysayer of naysayers. And this was a number of years ago. I think he told this story. It might have been at coach camp one year, and he asked the lady if she got to that event if she drove a car or rode a horse. And I thought,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
you
Yeah,
heard that one.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
thought that was a great response, and that, hey, where would we be without technology? Do you want to live in a cave, or do you want to live in air conditioning in the summer and have in-house heating in the winter? So it is obviously extremely useful, but I think as things filter down from people like yourself and the Gears system and Michael Neff and James Lights and guys who are doing a lot of know how this stuff works inside and out. As it gets to the next level of coaches, the message is very clear on here's what the data says. As it gets to the next level, it might get a little bit skewed just from human nature being able to describe something, and in their own mind, they're hearing the same thing, but they're telling someone else is hearing something different. By the time it gets down to assistants, be it assistants in the golf shop or assistant coaches or whoever it is, it could be completely opposite of what you told them from the beginning. And I think,
Hmm.
and then when they sit there and use science as the term that why somebody should listen to them and not have the understanding or more thorough understanding of why they're explaining this or why this student should do this, that's where I think we get into some trouble, and we get into these chat sites and Facebook groups and debates and arguments that go on and on and on, because some people throughout their career, it seems like, don't want to let those beliefs go. They stood on that mountain and they're going to die on that mountain. They don't give a
Yeah.
shit how much advancement has come in from work you're doing or somebody else to say, well, hey, Bob or Jim or Joe, look, here's how things have come along with AI is able to do it much faster, and here's the results we got. No, there's no way, John. You're wrong.
Right. I mean, I hear that all the time. Sure. And but it's okay. I was speaking about rate of closure in a place
I
just
remember this one.
yeah. And then the guy said that I was clearly wrong because the 2D video showed I was wrong. And my answer was, so you're saying that your 2D picture video is disproving 3D measurement and all the PhDs that have checked my work? He said, yes. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I don't have anything else to say. So,
I don't. I used to. I spent quite a time, number of years, looking at putting. And one thing that I had found out, or I had the theory on it, I didn't get a chance to set up cameras. Now this is over 15 years ago, so it's kind of hard at that time to put cameras out with ladders and everything on a putting green when you're at a resort / public golf course. But when the debate over straight back and straight through versus arc was going on, and a lot of coaches were teaching an in plane shoulder stroke. At least that's what a lot of people who I was working with were coming to me with. I told them that if you were to put the camera down the line, that the putter would show, even if it was in plane, it would show it would come off the straight line on the ground, or it would be perceived to have an arc. If you put the camera directly above the line on the ground, that the putter would in plane would be perceived arc. But if you put the camera on the same plane, let's say 71 degrees of the shaft plane, and put it at that angle and looked at the putter, it would look like it was going straight back and straight through. So I said,
Mm-hmm.
be careful on your perspective, because if everyone has a different perspective, it's going to show something different. So people, when they thought about it, they said it makes total sense, and I did too. I just never, again, had the ability to stick cameras and posts, and I was trying to do with iPads 15 years ago, as bad as they were compared to what's out there today. And then a phone down the line, I got to the point I got so frustrated, I said, to hell with it. They'll just have to take my word for it. I'll fall into the
Yeah.
same camp as everyone else. Just take my word for it.
And then we spend all that time working on people's paths, and they still do it today, and find out it doesn't even matter.
But
It doesn't even matter.
with all that is what we're talking about, and there still seems to be today, and I'm going to bring up the two sides, because any golf coaches or people who are golf gearheads or tech fans will know that the AMG, Sean Webb, and Stack and Tilt guys have been kind of having a back and forth. Respectfully, I would say so, at least for now, that the lead shoulder, so the left shoulder for a right-hander, they've been arguing. Stack and Tilt guys say there's more of a vertical drop of the left shoulder, or it moves down. Maybe that's a better way to say it. And the AMG guys have been saying there's more of a lateral component to the front lead shoulder, or in the right-hander's case, the left shoulder. And I just sit there, and over the years, have watched coaches, very good coaches, very respected coaches, will sit there and see the exact same thing and argue something completely opposite. And I know you've been doing this longer than I have, and been involved longer than I have, and we've said we just wonder how this shit happens. But what is your take on when you got two completely different things that are looking at the same video or same data, or how can this continue to happen in golf?
Bias. You don't want your idea getting disproven or changed or crushed or whatever that you want. I think ego has a huge part in it. I believe we as golf instructors would be so much better served if we could admit we're wrong when we're wrong. And that would, to this day, all these years of coaching, when I've had a idea that I've been coaching, might be for years, and I've found out that that's wrong, okay, and what I've said and the reason that I thought about it, this is why I'm coaching it, and I find out I'm wrong. I've never had one of my players quit me because I said, you know what, I figured this stuff out, it's wrong, and that's not right. And here's on the other flip, I made people better doing that, right? So it doesn't mean that I wouldn't say the same thing again to somebody if I thought it would make them do the right thing. But at the same time, I can acknowledge that my theory behind it or my idea behind it was factually incorrect. And so we don't teach it like that anymore. And all I get is more respect from that. And I think that's lost, and maybe in social media, because you don't want to be out there on camera or on this podcast or publicly out there on X or Facebook, and you say something that sticks, once it's on the internet, it's on there forever, and that you can't come back and go, yeah, I was wrong 5 years ago. So what? I've evolved. I've moved on. I'm not going to die on that hill, so to speak, once I know that it's not right. Now, as long as I'm, because things that we know now to be factually correct could easily be proven wrong 2-3 years from now. Mm-hmm. That's why the scientists like Dr. McKenzie and Dr. Kwan and these guys are so important. And when we have, active people that at best, maybe they have a college education, maybe they have a high school education, or challenging people that do that shit for a living. Sorry. You know, that's crazy to me. You know, it doesn't mean that you have to follow. I mean, you know, exactly what they say, and you got to take what Dr. McKenzie or Dr. Kwan says and then filter what you need into your client. But some of this stuff is nuts, and I would go, how? I mean, I haven't followed that debate, so I don't really understand. I mean, I would imagine that, yeah, you probably move it back more laterally than you would go down, just by my years in 3D. I'd also go, why does it matter? How is that helping somebody play better that they do that? Because, you know, I look at fundamentals in the swing maybe differently. So let's just say, let's just take AMG side. I think they said it goes more laterally than down. And then Stack and Silt says down and less laterally.
Correct.
So let's just take their side for a second and go, okay, you know, if I stay centered in my turn, right, then my shoulder, and I get to 90 degrees, my shoulder, and let's just say I'm 2 feet across, well, my shoulder is going to move a foot laterally. Well, it ain't going a foot down. You know, I'm not going to bend it enough to go a foot down. So, okay. And then you might take somebody else that might not turn as much and left side bend more. Well, it would go down more. And so which way is correct? I mean, I don't know. Why does it matter? Did the ball fly good for this person? Were they getting injured doing what they were doing? And so what value does that have for us as coaches to a player? And again, I didn't follow it, so I don't know what they're saying the value of it is. But I would say zero. You know, I don't care. And if I was to pick out fundamentals to say, okay, well, all the tour players go back more than they go down, so we take their argument, and I'm going, okay, well, if all tour players do that, I would call that a fundamental, but we already know they probably don't. If I go through my database, I've only found 3 things. I could also say their right arm straightens in the downswing, and then I could say, see, every player does that too. You know, and what I look for in a fundamental is if every tour player does it, okay, and then the amateurs don't do it, then now I'm talking about a fundamental. To get on tour, these fundamentals are, to me, a prerequisite. And that page used to be very long, and now there's 3 things on it. So,
What would those 3 things be?
Well, the 3 things that I've found is I've yet to record. And again, however many players I have in my database, it has to be always tempered with I've yet to record a player that on the PGA Tour, you know, and they have to have a card, active card when I record it to count in my database. So is the pelvis will start the downswing. So the pelvis rotates first. The pelvis will slide towards the target before it turns. So there's 2. And then we'll see some trail. This is the one I think that's going away. Okay, next is I'll see some trail heel movement towards the target first in the downswing before I see their heel go up or back. So I'll see some movement because they're in the twisting motion trying to twist themselves open. And so somewhere in there, I'll see that movement first in the foot, the trail foot, where that heel will rock towards the target first before it goes up or back. But there's some people out there that I haven't captured that possibly violate that. You know, the last one to go away was I would see the closing of the club. My saying is always, you know, close the club early so you don't have to close it late. And I, you know, I would always see that happen, you know, within a foot of the top of the swings, they start closing it. And then I recorded a player that got all the way down to arms parallel opening it before they closed it, and they were really good. And their ball striking was good. There wasn't any issues with it. And so that, to me, that fundamental is gone. Because now I have a quality tour player that does it, and he can play. So that opens up to the amateurs. Guess what, amateurs? Even though I might like this, I can now watch for an amateur that opens a club face that day. If they're good, don't fix it.
Yeah.
You know, if it's causing them a problem, okay, fix it. You know, back when Dr. McKenzie and I looked at the shallowing aspect of it, and we found a tour player that did not shallow. Well, guess what? You can make it on tour and not shallow because he made it way up there, right? He is as good as it gets. And so you can make it on tour without shallowing. So that's a proven fact. But does that mean we don't teach shallowing? Does it mean I still don't teach, you know, closing it a little earlier for most players? I absolutely do. But it does open my eyes to, if somebody's successful doing something, then I'm going to leave it alone because it's not going to affect. So if we go back to that thing, if somebody's tilting it down more or going more laterally and they're successful doing it, who cares?
Yeah, if it's
What
not,
is
if
it?
it's not the cause of the problem, why would you alter that in somebody's swing outside of just to match the theory or the silo that you put yourself
Yeah, and I certainly wouldn't. I'm not going to get in an argument on that. I don't care, right? I don't care enough about that. You know, there's certain things I'll care about that I want to speak up on, but that would be like, that's kind
in?
of a
Wouldn't be
nutty
one.
one.
What?
No, I mean, that just seems a little bit, maybe just talk to talk, you know, and you know, and one thing it does do when you get in these spats or argument, it gets you more clicks, you know, which the whole world's about more clicks. So if I can say something crazy and flamboyant, and even if it gets people upset, then you know, and I get more clicks over it. I mean, that's part of the game, you know, in the social media game. And I don't even, it doesn't bother me when people do that. I mean, you can recognize it usually pretty quickly and go, and you get more clicks. I mean,
Even if you took the Parker and Joe Mayo
mm-hmm,
disagreement, and this is where I got to thinking more on that was Parker's obviously got a lot of people that he has helped and has improved their
mm-hmm,
chipping, and Joe has a lot of people that he's helped and improved their chipping. So the first question that came to my mind was, instead of arguing these 2 points, and I'd love to have them both on. So if they catch this, and I've messaged Joe to come on, he's got an open invitation. Not that he's shying away, obviously his schedule is very high in demand. But I said, have each of you identified something that would tend to lead somebody to employ your style more so than the others. So I think in my own mind, maybe I'm of course biased to myself, but I would think in the bigger picture that understanding why someone would be steeper angle of attack and why someone could employ a shallower angle of attack might be the better question to answer to determine which of with these two theories that would work best for them. Now, I know
well,
you've done a whole wedge study. You know the answer to that better than
sure. I know. Well, I know that. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I know the answer, and the answer is steeper. It's not that's not a debatable fact. Um, you know, that's the answer. And so because you want to teach and say, you know, I don't think Parker's done much measuring. And he's teaching a style. It's kind of like I said, even if you're teaching something that's, you know, I don't care what anybody teaches, but if they're getting better, then great. And, you know, Parker's successful, people are going to him, so I have to assume, I don't know who they are, but, you know, you'd think they wouldn't go to him if they weren't getting better.
right.
And I know him, but I don't know who he's, you know, coaching. Unless I see him out there on tour or something, I might go, oh, okay, he's working with him. But you know, it's pretty self-evident that if your players are getting worse, they generally leave you.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know,
They're
and
not
and
sticking
they
around.
right. So you know, Parker's successful on that. But if you're going to run to the facts, you know, and my data showed it, that's Joe's on the right side of the facts.
Okay.
And so, you know, but that's a separate issue than a coaching issue,
Hmm.
right? And it's, what you want to say, and then you start to, now we going, okay, well, when I employ these facts and these ideas, does somebody get better than if I make them shallower? And certainly in my experience, making them shallower makes them worse. But there's certain times then shallow is good. You know, if you want to get some grass on the ball, if you want to get the ball to go straight up, I mean, yeah, you should read the lie and use the lie to your advantage. But if we're just talking stock stuff, then shallower is just not as good. And the whole idea, it makes sense that you would think to a player, it would be like you could sell somebody, well, if you come in shallow, you won't dig.
Mm-hmm.
I could sell that, you know, because it makes kind of, okay, well, it's coming in here, it's going to scoot on the ground, and I can take a club and I can run it across the ground and hit a ball just fine.
Yeah, the tangent point of the arc would be greater, so your margin of error in theory is going to be larger.
Right, and then, but you put it in practicality of now you start bringing in all the variables in a 3D look at it, and it doesn't hold water. But it's easy to sell to a player. And I could get them convinced, and I could get them really going to where they believe that they're shallow, and maybe they wouldn't be, and they could be very successful. But, you know, when I did the study, it was completely unbiased. It was somewhere around 9 years to collect the data. And so, you know, and I think it was at coach camp, I got accused of, you know, cherry picking the data or taking an average and to get that 27 to 30 degree launch angle. And I was like, I remember telling the person, I don't remember you ever being there for those 9 years, you know, so, and of course that's not what I did. And I don't even care if you think it's right or not. I'm just giving you the information. And the information was, and how I actually did it for the record was, when anybody that's been in here, and they might not realize I'm doing it, but they've heard me say it, is somebody will hit a shot and we have a particular basket that's 30 yards out there, and we'd started off 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and all the looks were the same, so the players don't want to be in those wires that long, so I put at 30. And then I would have, I had a margin for how high the target could be in front of you and how low it could be to count, okay, to actually go in the data, so that it wouldn't be too high because that's going to promote a different swing, and something very low would promote a different swing. And so I kept it within plus or minus 3 feet of the level. So if we go to a range that has a real dip, I just wouldn't even take that data. So then I would just ask the player to hit 30 yards, and I would ask them, tell me when you like it. Tell me when it's perfect. That's it. That's it. I didn't ask me how. I didn't ask them what. I didn't ask them anything. And so when they say that one's perfect, or I like that one, or that one's the one, that's the one that went in the database, because it was their idea of what they believed was the perfect shot, which I can't get any better validation than the player themselves telling me that's what I want to do. And especially a tour player. You know, they're going to tell you if they hit it one groove lower than they wanted to. So when they tell me perfect, I take them at their word, and I take that shot, and that's what gets plugged in to the data to get it crunched. And it wasn't something I was even looking for. I was really looking at the kinematic sequence of it and why it was different than normal swings and that kind of thing. That's the stuff I was looking for. So this just was a result out of it, the 27 to 30 degree launch, because I started looking at the TrackMan data and the stuff going, wait a minute, all these players. And then, because I had them categorized into, you know, where they were ranked at the time that they were taking the, you know, the session with me. Right. And then I would even, you know, if they moved up in the rankings, then, you know, I would actually have a category of, well, this player is in this category and he was in the 20 to 30 ranked, and then he moved up to the top 10. Well, they have this category. And so I had them separated pretty good. And it was, you were in the top 50 in the world at those distances, 50 yards and in, and every single player that I had in my database, I think it was over 30, which is a significant amount, all launched it at 27 to 30 degrees, 100%. and the ones outside that didn't. And they some of them were, not in the category, and some of them launched it at 27 to 30 and were not in the category, but nobody was in the top 50 that I recorded that didn't launch it, their stock shot at that.
That's amazing that all of
And
them fell in.
right, all of them. And then I actually had two players that started launching it higher, different coaching, right? Started launching it higher and went out of the top 50.
Huh.
And then they went back to the other coach, went back down, went back in the top 50. So that happened. Two players of those 30 happened. So that's significant, anecdotal, whatever you want to call it. That's significant enough that I said, here, world, that was cool. That was something very interesting. And the more interesting thing to me was that it was every type of coaching verbiage you could ever say to somebody. So some of them being told to be shallow, some told to be steep, some told that you pinch the ball against the ground, some, all kinds of things. Yet the player found that range. And so that, to me, was also a significant part of the understanding when you're looking at all the data, that was like, wow, it didn't matter what they were told, but they did it.
Yes.
And
the result they wanted. Yeah.
The range was 53-degree wedge to 64. So they were even using different clubs to get the same number. Right? And probably if I broke it down to how they were coached, maybe there's a reasoning in there. I don't know, but probably closer to their delivery style would have probably, So when you start looking at the data and you start looking at, well, these guys are all coming from, 7 degrees to 10 degrees down on their stock shots. Well, I'm not going to sit there and say, go to Joe like 12 to 15 down. I think those are specialty shots when you're down there, and a lot of times the ball comes much lower with a lot more spin, obviously, but much lower than what I saw. And then, certainly there would be times you would want to be shallower than that, but nobody ever defined it for me. And that's when I started to look at it, is there was some debate going on about being shallow and this and that, and nobody ever said, well, what is shallow? So I just decided, well, 5 degrees and down is shallow, 5 to 10 is medium, and over that steep. Mm-hmm.
The Sinclair principle. That's what Sinclair principle.
At least in my mind, I had a category I could put people in, and it really ended up being the stock thing was 7 to 10, not 5 to 10. But that's really where the sweet spot was. And so do I coach that? You bet I do. I could see players that are average players that as soon as they launch at that, and it didn't matter the distance, but the chips, the pitches, as soon as they launched it between 27 and 30 degrees, they hit their spot almost always within a reason. And even the highest handicapper. So now I took data on that, and I was like, okay, that's something that we can do. And I've been told I should redo my study, and I say no, I would never redo that, for the simple fact I know for a fact probably now that the players would average launch it higher than they did when I took it, possibly.
Because of the equipment, the balls have gotten firmer?
No, because of coaching. Okay. Now it's been coached to hit it higher. And I'd also state that those players would be worse, and if they're going to stock shots. Now, I like the stock shot too, simply because that window is the same every time, and then it's easier for the player to go up and out of their window to get the right. And again,
than two.
Right, they can deviate much easier when they have this one thing down, and I think that's been proven pretty simply. But that I do watch players sometimes launch it higher out there than I would want to see it. And so I think there might be somebody now in the top 50 that launches it over 30. But I would also argue they're not as good as the players. My study was done unbiased. There was nobody was even talking about it. So it was, to me, that's as pure a data as you can get because there's no outside influence to it at all other than what they've done, what they've been coached, and that's it.
Yeah, how they figured it out.
How they figured it out. And now there's so much information coming to these players, I think it taints the product of getting real clean data.
Well, it's funny how you say they were using different clubs because I was watching a video of Mo Norman hitting chip shots uh, the couple weeks ago, and he's got the ball position forward in his stance, but it's coming off exactly the same every time. And then you watch some of these other guys that are playing it back off their trail foot or close to it, and they're getting a little lean forward, and they're coming down. But and I don't know if you ever got a chance to measure Mo's, but I would be very curious to see what that would have been fun to see what his launch numbers were. You know, obviously everyone knows him as a great ball striker, but his chipping, from everyone I've talked to, was equally as good as his ball striker.
Every time I saw that, it was pretty phenomenal.
Yes.
He was pretty phenomenal about everything, to be honest. I mean, I don't know that he had a significant weakness in his physical game.
Mm-hmm. But to your point that players were using everything from 52 to 64, it's just going to, I think that's maybe where it gets into, there is some synchronization of if they have a tendency to play the ball a little forward in their full game, that their timing and release patterns are timed to ball maybe a touch forward, and maybe now they use a 56 or 2. And if they're, let's say a Paul Azinger where they're going to have a tendency to move the ball back, maybe they're trapping or really de-lofting that 64, 62, or even 60-degree wedge. Maybe that's, I'm just throwing out speculation and theory. Maybe that's what the nuances of that might have been. But I think what, you know, because that the coach or open forum that we were at a couple years ago, where Joe was on the panel, I think Brad Faxon was up there, I think Parker, and James Ridyar was in the audience, and there was a respectful disagreement. But I think that what Ping has done, bringing in James and Joe and Derek Kaminsky, I'm very curious to see what comes of that study, because the hints and the little teasers that I think some have put out have been pretty impressive. That, hey, we're really learning a lot of stuff about short game. When we get that brain trust of those guys, and Eric and Paul and Marty and everybody else at Ping, it's like, I'm waiting for the book to come out on this one because it'll be a bestseller right away. I give them all.
Yeah, and I think that stuff will be as pure as it can be too. You know, just when they came out and said, hey, 87% of the people, you know, hit the ground before they hit the ball. I'm like, and then of course I get a first call saying, John, that kind of blows your steep idea. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. If anything, it's at least the club's pushing the grass down before it hits the ball instead of scooping it up. I mean, you know, that's the other thing that I said with the shallowness, because definitely you launch the ball higher. The facts are the facts. You know, if you're going to launch the ball higher, you've got to solve an issue for me, is that, you know, the lower the ball goes, the better chance it has to go in the hole. Now, that's a fact. If it's rolling on the ground, then it's you know, coming in.
Less variables, less bounce influence.
Right. So now the higher you start to get that ball, the less probability it can go in the hole. Well, I want my players to make the chips. We don't teach them to get it close. I teach them that hole's right there and it can go in. And so you should treat it in a situation, most situations, not extreme crazy ones, but most situations, why wouldn't you try to make it? You can reach it, you know, and it's right there. You can read it. You can see the nuances in the green. That's different than being 150 yards out, but you're right there. You know, why wouldn't you read it like a putt? And why wouldn't you be able to control the spin the way that you want to, you know, and understand how this ball is being hit, read the lie, and you have a better chance of making it if it's rolling on the ground. And so that right there in my mind is one thing that deters me from going up unless it's necessary. And getting back to using 8 irons around the greens and things like that too. You know, I'm really a proponent of that, of just get it on the green and roll it, especially for the amateurs.
One of the drills that I give people who come to me for chipping is I'll tell them, I say, look, you can either take one club and you can chip to, let's say, 5 different holes around the green from the same spot, but that's your variability in your training. Or you can take 3 different clubs, or 4, how many you want, all your wedges or all your evens from 8 8 to wedge to 56 to 60, whatever it is, but three or four of them, and then chip to the same hole all your shots, and then go to another hole from that same spot. But you're going to use different clubs all the way through, so that at
Mhm.
least your brain, as you start to do that, will start to develop an idea like a Rolodex of 8 iron goes X distance, rolls out Y. Uh, Pitching wedge goes X distance, rolls out Y. And then when they're in that position on the golf course, their brain will flip that Rolodex and it'll pick up what club, because it recognizes that picture. And so I
Right.
always thought it was a great way to do it. And you don't hear about the 8s and 9s wedges being used anymore. Everything's a 60 and hit down. Maybe just we're old and coming from the
Well,
80s.
I mean, to be honest, and I'll sit there and prove it even on the tours. It's like, why aren't you using 8 iron here? Like, look, bump it in there, and hell, the damned if the tour player doesn't make it a lot on their first one. I mean, the ball looks really cool if it goes up there spinning and stops short of the hole, but it doesn't go in,
Hmm.
right? And but you get in the practice, you get in this little area, and you don't realize that you should practice all of it. Our chipping would even be better. And a lot of the golf courses obviously out there, or you're going to use your 60 or 58 or 56 predominantly just because of the designs.
Hmm.
So that's for sure nowadays. It's not the old, bump and run courses that maybe, you grew up on too, and certainly I did. So there's definitely going to be more of that. But the repertoire should be there. And back to what you were saying is, you go around the green and you pick these different shots. Now I did a little mental study with players as I handed them a club, didn't matter which club, could be a 5 iron, a 60, a wedge, and there's a chip. And I just handed them a club, and then we might talk about something else, and then I would then ask them, well, how are you going to play this chip? They would always tell me how they're going to play the chip with whatever club they had in their hand,
Hmm.
and they wouldn't. I mean, with rare cases, they go, well, I wouldn't use this club, but usually they were for straightforward, um, type chips that you could use any club.
Yeah, they'd sort it out somehow.
And so they'd say, and it was really biased towards the club they were holding. When I would have the club out of their hands or put multiple clubs in their hands, they had more variability. And so back to you, when their Rolodex is running, and I kind of teach my players, I'm like, here, just sit in front of the ball and have 3 or 4 clubs and put it down by the ball, and one of them's going to be hot, one of them's going to be, ooh, that's just right, and you're going to be throwing away. It's going to create an emotional reaction.
Right.
Even though you could hit with that, you're going to feel some anxiety when you see it, and then you're going to toss that club away, and then it might be one club will stand out, and there you go. That's the one you can commit to. Or it might be a couple of them, and then you can kind of make a choice and commit
Hmm.
that way. But getting them to commit, and if they're always walking up, pulling their card up, putter 60, and then they get all the way over to the green, and they go, well, I wish I had my 8 iron. They go, well, I'll hit it anyway. Well, that's not going to turn out good. It's rare that it would. You probably blade it, hit something, and stopped it perfect, right? Because that'd be the only way. But usually that's not good because you don't have the thing that you really want or need in your hand. But we've gotten so specialized with the 60. When did Phil win all his majors? When he was working with Dave Peltz and he started chipping around the greens differently. But for him, to me, and this, I don't know this to be true, but it just looked like it bored the hell out of him.
I'd
And
say so.
he would go back and go to his hero shots that he's, unbelievable at, but he wasn't as good. And when he was winning those majors and he had his run, he was using different clubs around the green that I'd ever seen him use before. And then, he went away with it. But I think I was asked one time, he's like, how would you fix Phil's driving? I was like, I wouldn't want to, because if he hit every fairway, he'd be bored to death and quit, and I want to watch him play. Right? I don't want him to quit.
That is
So,
what when if someone comes to me and let's say their mechanics are off and they're chipping and we get them square and I say, look, what I don't want you to do is use your 60 on every shot, especially when we're trying
hmm
to solidify some changes in your stroke. I'd rather you take out all your wedges and your 8 and 9 or whatever, and just if you're going to go off center of your stance, wherever we ever put you, hit that shot and go out and learn center stock shot with every single club that you're going to chip with. Have your variety come that way. When you really get good at that, then we can start
Mm-hmm.
reintroducing these other things, and you can have a ton of variety. Because I say it's like a Melga Marcos shoe closet. You've got 300 pairs of shoes and nothing to wear. You have too many shots, you're just going to confuse yourself, and you're going to completely throw a monkey wrench into the tweaking mechanics we just did, because you're going to be doing some goofy things.
Yeah, that's 100%. And I think as coaches, if we could get back to some of that, using imagination and
Mm-hmm.
different clubs around the green, and teach more getting the ball rolling. Everybody wants to hit the spinner that stops.
Sexy.
It is sexy. It's awesome. It's fun. But at the same time, knowing how, we want to lower the score.
Yes.
So,
Forget the goal.
right. And I think we do forget the goal. People get complacent with it's okay. Well, I got it up and down. Well, that's great. That is a stat, right? But how many chip ins? How many? I want to see that stat. I want to see that one go up over time. I want to have the up and downs be a good number, but also I want to see increase of makes.
Mm-hmm.
Especially on shots that are makeable, if you want to say it that way. But to me, I believe just about all of them around the green are makeable in some way. Some are easier than others, but certainly I want to see them. Even I'm trying to teach my players on flop shots over bunkers. Just hole it on the fly. That's what I want you to do. You hit it up a flop shot. I want your mind to be, trying to hole that shot on the fly, because we should have been on the other side of the hole to begin with. This is a miss. If you haven't hit a flop shot over bunker, you screwed up the shot before, right? So we want to be on the other side of the hole, and this is a safety. And if you miss it a little bit, you're probably going to be tied anyway. Look, and it's going to look really cool if it just jars it on the fly. But most case scenario, you're going to be past the hole where now you're at worst going to make a bogey, versus you dump it in that bunker, you're going to make double or worse.
Yeah, you're going to probably fry egg if you're coming in high.
Right, and so you got to be aggressive, and you got to trust what you're doing. And if you have the right technique, there's no way you're going to hit it very far.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when you, again, even on a flop shot, when you come in shallow, those balls can go 150 yards away, right? And if you're coming in steep, not so much. I mean, those aren't going to get away from you. So, that's another, to me, another, check mark for being steeper coming in. And then, even the VSP that Joe talks about so much, I think we're finding out more and more and more that's getting more and more important, to have that VSP higher and higher and higher. And I think he's really on to something with that.
I've taught that in putting for a long time. I've always
Mm-hmm.
taught fingers should point straight down when you hold the putt, or what you feel is straight down, that it will eliminate the gating or unnecessary gating of the stroke.
Mm-hmm.
It reduces the variability on the face control coming through impact. And I messaged him about that. I said, have you tried this with putting? And he said, no, I really don't get into putting. I said, I've done it. Anytime that we connect, I mean, he's only 6 hours away. I might just have to drive up there. So I'll show it to you. It's very similar result to what you're seeing in chipping. So there's something.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. So I think that part's really going to show us some cool stuff.
Yeah,
so,
they got a lot of stuff. I'm getting anxious to see. I'm like, when are you guys going to release this stuff? You've been working on it now for a couple of years. You got to give us more behind the peak of the curtain.
Yeah. Well, I think they do it. They do it strategically when it can. But the one thing cool about Ping is they actually do release stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They don't keep it in house. They're very open. They show what they do, and I just admire the heck out of those guys for that reason, because they're truly helping us as coaches and helping us in golf for sure.
It's one of the only companies that does that. To have the foresight to pull all these guys in. Hey, here's what we're going to work on. Here's what we want to do. Now we're going to get this in. We'll utilize it and give it to our guys first and girls, and then we'll release it. And it's total commitment to their company culture and mantra. Like, let's make this game better for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, I give them all the credit in the world. I think very
Yeah.
highly of those guys.
They're super smart.
Yes.
I think all of them are super smart. So when if I have a serious question about that, those are the guys I'm going to. Dr. McKenzie, Eric, Paul. Those are the guys I really want to ask, because I know they're just going to give me the straight.
Mm-hmm.
You're nuts, or this is good, or whatever. And they're great people to have as as sources for us as coaches and even players.
Absolutely. Well, you're not too bad a source yourself. You've always been gracious enough when I've sent you questions and stuff to ponder over.
Well, I try to. I try to give, and I, I try to keep my opinions separated from the facts, and I think I do a good job of saying this is my opinion, when it is my opinion, and that's just what I may coach versus what the facts actually are. And that's why I think too that we haven't made the point enough is that when you're coaching, any kind of information or saying or thought is on the table. I mean, it doesn't have to be correct. And that's why we should also, I know when I get players in here that I'm going to coach that came from a different coach and they come in there and they tell you, well, this is what I was working on. And your immediate first reaction is like, what the heck would you be working on that for? That's the craziest thing either. But we have to understand that they're interpreting what that coach was saying. That coach might have been saying something to try to get them to do exactly what you're going to tell them to do. So you got to always give the deference to the coach going, until that coach told me that this is factual stuff, then I'm going to go, dude's just trying to help, right? And maybe that verbiage didn't work for that player. That's why I think you should also have lots of different ways to say something. I get it.
And I think the context, where they were when they went to that coach and what he or she thought was going to get them to get where they needed to. I think many coaches, and I think this has been seen maybe at some of where they've done the demonstrations, everyone kind of sees the same issue. Just everyone has a different way, as you're trying to explain.
Sure, it's saying it.
Yes, it's saying.
And as a coach, you should have a bunch of different ways. I tell my players, they go, well, are you worried I'm not going to get it? And I'm like, no, I don't ever get worried till I'm down to my last 2 or 3 ways to say it. And then I start going, man, I got to find some new ways. I got to find some new ways before I run out here because they're not getting it. And I think that's everything's on the table because you don't know I can't figure out what somebody's feeling. I mean, and if I bias my coaching with what I do or what I feel or what I say, that hadn't been productive. If I use what I feel as an example of some extreme shit I feel to do something correctly, that has some value. Like, all the time I tell people, I mean, to hit a straight ball, 0-0, if we want to get that straight, right. I feel like I hit it 20 yards right. And I felt that way since I was 10 years old. I mean, it's not changing. So, that gives some value that it's okay if you feel like you're swinging way left when it goes straight, or you feel this or that when it just, the feeling is very valuable and very precise. And it's your feeling, and you shouldn't try to decide that, if I was ever to try to make that feel straight, I think I would screw myself up.
Probably.
Yeah. Instead of just going, what, when it's straight, it feels like this. The only difference in 10 years old and today, I don't look to the right anymore. When I was 10 years old and I figured that out, I would always look up to the right and the ball would be over the target. And I just don't look over there when I have that feeling anymore. So I think that's some valuable stuff that we can conject. But to tell everybody that walks in here that you got to feel like you hit it to the right to hit a straight ball, that would just be foolish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially if that would make them worse.
Oh, well, make half of them worse for sure. Yes. Especially if they're drawers. I'm a cutter. That's probably some reason why I feel that way, right? Is because I like swinging left, and I've done that my whole life. I didn't even know what a draw was until I played with some kids and they started curving the other way. I was like, I wanted, and I'd spent my whole time growing up as a person to watch was Lee Trevino. He didn't hit too many draws on the practice range when I would get to watch. He would hit some beautiful cuts, so that was just the image in my head, and he's God to me, and he would draw it occasionally, but not when I was watching in practice. It was mostly
when he needed to.
Yeah, he did whatever he wanted to when he needed to. He was pretty amazing, so.
Well, you got a few minutes. We can wrap up with emergency 9. It's just 9 random questions that are kind of fun to.
Yeah.
Show. All right, we'll jump in. The first one and last one everyone's gotten. I think we ran out of time last time you were on to do this, so this will be fun to do this time.
Okay.
So you're going to play in a member guest. and everyone's having a good time, and you're in the shootout, and they're gonna play some music when you walk up to the first hole of the shootout. What song are you gonna have them play for you?
Oh, probably to get going, anything AC/DC would probably be it.
That usually will get them
Uh,
going.
yeah, that AC/DC has something about it. That puts some energy in you really quick.
All right.
Um, I would say that for sure. That's why in the morning times I will definitely put the AC/DC on if I need to get going.
All right. Now this one I'm very curious to hear yours because you've seen so many swings. In your opinion, who has the prettiest swing in golf?
Prettiest swing in golf. Wow. Um, Today or ever?
Let's go today, just to keep all the
Um,
young listeners engaged.
Today, prettiest swing in golf.
Men or women can be at either tour or
Well,
just
Nelly Korda would be like,
yeah.
that's awesome. Jake Knapp, that's really good. If we go, there's two men. There's a man and a lady. But Nelly Korda, that's
That's pretty sweet.
that's his. Yeah, that's definitely something I would love to look like.
That's
So
my answer. I've asked this now, I think at least a dozen times. And Nellie's the first one that comes to mind. Just mechanically, rhythmically, aesthetically, it just looks awesome to my eye.
yeah.
Somebody
Oh,
else.
I think to mine too. I would think to lots of people. That swing is amazing.
Hmm.
And then yeah, you just look up and Jake Knapp comes to mind as me as somebody that would be like the aesthetically pleasing, you know, that most people would probably.
Yeah, the modern day Freddie, I think they were referring him to last week on the telecast, or maybe week TPC was it? That was last week. Yeah. T-
Was it?
I think they were doing a comparison of him in couples, the timing and the sequencing and everything else of the swing. It was length and everything. It was very similar, which was kind of cool to see. I think he's getting a
Yeah.
lot of comparisons. Let's see, move on. Hollywood calls you. Says, John, we've watched your career over the years. We want to make a movie about you, and we're going to let you pick whoever you want to play you. Who are you going to have them pick?
Man, I don't like too many Hollywood people, but who would Dennis Quaid. I'll do it that because I just watched his movie. That was good.
There you go. That's a good one. Your go-to hot dog condiment, if you could pick one, which one would it be?
Mustard.
That didn't take very long.
No, it's got to be mustard.
That one is about split. That's a newer one. That's one that's split right down the middle so far. So
What's the other one?
ketchup.
Ketchup, I
Yep.
guess. Ketchup and mustard. Yeah.
One was an offshoot was a jalapeno. With some
Yeah. Well, the first thing that came to my head, well, certainly it's a jalapeno hot dog,
yes.
right? It's the sausage. Definitely a jalapeno hot dog.
Let's see. Your favorite purchase in the last, we'll call it, say a year, under $500.
My favorite under five. I don't buy anything under
All
$500.
right, we'll bump this out, and it could be could be a household item, could be
In the last year, um, gosh, I don't even buy that much stuff. I'm a minimalist at home. I don't even have anything. Um, Here I got to get that way here. Um, Gosh, I don't even, I don't even know that I can't think of anything I've bought in the last year that's not even golf related. Um,
anything you
yeah,
want.
I don't know. I don't have a clue. I mean, I don't buy much.
No problem. We'll go on to the next one. Um, what's worse, a well done steak or iron covers?
Oh, well done steak is nasty. I'm from Texas, man. I didn't even have to hear B. That was A. I was out. I didn't care what I heard next. That was well done steak is nasty. Yeah, no
Who
chance.
who would be in your dream foursome?
Oh, my dream foursome. I'm gonna go. Lee has to be in there, and I've already got to play with him, which is always fun. But um, Lee would have to be in there. I'm gonna go Texas all the way, pretty much. I'm gonna go Tommy Bolt, and I'm gonna go. Hogan and Nelson.
It's a pretty good group.
Yeah.
No Matthew McConaughey.
No, I don't really know. I don't, does he even play golf?
I think he does random. I've
Does
seen
he?
him swing a club. It's not bad.
Oh, okay.
It's a little
Yeah.
wild, but not bad.
Uh, I'm a nostalgia guy. I'm always looking in the history.
Who would be on your Mount Rushmore for coaches?
Um, if I think of who moved the needle,
Mm-hmm.
when I think of that, like who's given us the ability to charge what we charge? I mean, I've got to put like David Ledbetter up there, Butch Harmon's got to be up there. Um, even Hank Haney and even Jim McLean probably up there as far as, I don't have to agree with any of them, do I?
No.
Okay.
Just
But
whatever your reasons.
but
It's a broad
these
question.
guys are, to me, I admire, and they put coaching on the map. And so when I talk to them, I'm not necessarily judging them as coaching, but I'm judging them more as people and what they did and their marketing skills. And I don't think coaching probably wouldn't be where it is today. Maybe it would, because there'd be somebody else maybe,
Mhm.
but I think they did us all a really good service and allow us to charge what we charge. I'd get slammed to say, because, you got all the factions. Well, I hate this guy, this guy, this guy. Well, I know personally at least two of those guys, and I like them, and it doesn't mean I agree with their coaching, but I know what they did,
Yeah, their
and
impact.
their impact on the game and the coaching would be that would be it, I guess. That might be a controversial statement.
I think anybody, no matter what four you put on there, somebody going to be controversial on there.
Yeah,
Someone's always
yeah.
say it's a golf world. Someone's always going to argue.
Yeah,
And I
there
always,
might be a modern day one and then the
yes,
all-time one, but
and
maybe it should be different. There's one that you maybe admire as their stuff that they say and they put out there, and others just admire. But I'm a capitalist, man. Those guys helped, I mean, they helped a lot.
And then the last one, in your opinion, also curious on your answer on this one, since you cross both generations, is the GOAT. Who's the greatest of all time as far as golfers?
Player?
Yes, player.
Oh, I have it. It's obviously it's Tiger or Jack, but I always say it this way: Jack is the greatest of all time, and Tiger's probably the best we've ever seen. So he's probably the best player, and then Jack is the greatest. Obviously, I do that just because of record. How do you have 18 majors in 20 something seconds? And he had to play against some pretty rough hombres, to
Hmm.
do that. And Tiger with his health issues didn't get there, and not going to get there. And he may prove me wrong. But I think Tiger 2000, it can't get any better. I mean, and then even in my mind, it's like, dude, why'd you change? It's like, that was as good as it gets. So I think that guy over a long period of time, Tiger, that was amazing. That had to be the best golf that's ever been played. And then Jack just over a whole career. I mean, I just can't argue with that. He has to be the greatest.
Yeah,
So there's two different goats there. One's the greatest and one's the best.
yes, I think, and that has become more the consensus. I think Tiger might have the edge, and I think we're coming into the sixth year of doing this show. I think Tiger's probably got a 60-40 edge, and that's largely been demographic, age related.
Probably.
Now that Tiger is kind of a few years out, um, it more, and I agree with your answer. I completely agree, and I think more people are lending themselves to that, understanding that the chances of Tiger coming back and doing Tiger things are probably extremely limited, if not done.
Yeah. I mean,
And rightfully
he could
so.
slip in there.
Yeah, his focus
Yeah.
is more on his family now. That would be
Yeah.
my theory, and rightfully so. He's enjoying his kids and his life, and he's earned it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think, too, Jack probably gets hurt because we didn't even know the word goat when I was a kid,
Right.
other than it ran around and ate the grass and whatever else it could find. You know, so Tiger gets an edge just because that was in his time. The
Hmm.
goat became in his time. Um, but that's Jack never. We all thought those were just the little animals out in our
Yes,
farms.
exactly. Somebody wants to come to you for a lesson, shaft fitting, have their game checked out, full analysis. What's the best way to reach you?
Just john@sinclairgolf.com, and that's my email. And then you can obviously go to sinclairgolf.com. It does say on there that I don't take any new students. Um, True to some degree, but sometimes don't be afraid to go and ask or send me an email, because I do have a list, and as that list comes up, I move them up. So uh, it's just the book got overwhelming. I had to close it. And
It's a good problem to have.
yeah, so I don't like being 3 or 4 months booked out.
Hmm.
So I like a month to two. So and I'm getting older too. So I like, and I only do 2 lessons max in a day, because I only go 3 hours. So it's really cut down on how many people I see, but at the same time, the quality, in my opinion, has gone way up to have somebody for 3 hours that you can do so many different things. And then kind of like this, have a conversation
Yes.
and get to know them and talk about things versus, I got an hour, I got to hit so many balls and get you out and get the next one. I think that's been a great benefit to my clients and me as a coach, not having to keep up with, there's a time it was, I was seeing 700 to 800 people a year. And I just, and there's only so much note taking, and you got to go review. And I don't think that was a good service to the people coming in here completely, even though maybe they didn't notice. I was noticing that I was losing touch with each individual person. And I think as a coach, I got to be involved.
That was Dr. Stu McGill's theory as well, that when he started his back evaluations, he went from an hour to two and they pushed it all the way to three, to allow him to understand the person's lifestyle and what's their triggers and pains and what they want to do in life. He said, you can't do that, and definitely can't do it in less than 30 minutes, and you need at least 2, 3 hours to do that. I agree with you. I wish I could do that more, but around here at a resort place, and a few local guys are coming to me saying, I'm playing in the member guest next week. I need a Band-Aid, and
Yeah.
resort people are here for a week, and they're not gonna do, you know,
Yeah. They
they
just
don't have
come
the
in,
time. Yeah, they come in, they want to
just get a little something to go play and
That's
have
right.
a good time. And that's a different animal, which is,
Completely.
it's very needed
Hmm.
in those environments for sure.
But I'm in line with you. I'd love to have multiple hours to spend with somebody and get everything right, learn them, get to know them better.
Yeah. I don't have any questions after 3 hours.
No.
I always had questions, after, usually they're going, okay, I'm tired, I'm done. And then you're like, okay. And after an hour, it was always like, and it was like a doctor's office, by the end of the day, I'm backed up, an hour late, and
Hmm.
I was driving, and my personality doesn't work good. And that was putting stress on me I didn't need.
No.
So,
Well, it's good. I'll have all the one-click links to all your sites, the social media, your website, and everything else. Everybody, if you want to reach out to Jon, if you want to, you better do it soon and get on that list, because that waiting list is going to get longer and longer.
yeah, it's long, but it's okay. They do come through. So
Awesome.
don't be afraid to be on it.
Jon, thanks for joining us. Everybody, thanks for checking in again. Jon, if you hang out for just 1 minute, we'll check you out next time, everybody.